introducing hybrid electric or full battery electric or hydrogen electric even is a system transformation. It's not just about the aircraft being certified and then you go out and you start using it. It's a bigger change.
Welcome to Sustainability in the Air, the world's first podcast dedicated to sustainable aviation. I'm your host, Shashank Nigam, the CEO of Simply Flying. On this show, I speak with aviation leaders, innovators, and policymakers driving real action, separating the signal from the noise to spotlight what's truly moving the industry forward. The same focus that is at the heart of our new book, Sustainability in the Air, Volume 2. In it, Dirk Singer and I take stock of how far the industry has come and how far we still need to go. With the global carbon budget potentially running out by 2032, the clock is ticking. But the most promising solutions today aren't just environmentally sound, they are economically superior as well. From SAF and contrail mitigation to direct air capture, the book offers a practical roadmap for aviation's journey to net zero. Get your copy today. Link in the show notes. My guest today is Jan Petter Steinland, the Director of Strategic Analysis and Transformation at the Civil Aviation Authority of Norway. Jan is the first fighter pilot we're having on this podcast, a fighter pilot turned commercial pilot. He flew many years for SAS Scandinavian, and then person who has brought clean aviation to Norway. Jan and I speak about Norway's vision for electric aviation in what's called the test arena, where they are doing lots of experiments with the likes of Beta Electric and Electra as well. We also talk about Norway's pioneering SAF policies as well, and why a country like Norway can push aviation towards a sustainable future. Please enjoy this conversation as much as I truly enjoyed having it with Jan. Jan, it is a pleasure to be speaking with you. When we met, you told me that you used to be a fighter jet pilot and then a commercial airline person, and now you are trying to make Norway once again lead in electric technology, but this time for airplanes, not cars.
That's
How
true.
this transition, tell me about the background, and welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. I hope I didn't open by saying I've been flying fighters because it's not really the key here. But what I have been doing is that my first 15 years in aviation was in the Norwegian Air Force. So I got my training by the way in the US, and then I did, of course, the rest here in Europe. Fantastic time, and I learned a lot. And just you ask about sort of how this is background impact, and I think it has shaped me a little bit in the way we work with innovation and new technologies. Back then there was a period where we had too many accidents, so I lost quite a few colleagues in the F-16 area, and that has really never let me forget about safety. It's so paramount, and these safety aspects are really driving some of the work we're doing. Now, having said that, I've always worked with development, really looking for new solutions when you feel like you're established in a pattern, but you have to keep developing. And of course, in this day and age, things around us are developing fast within the aviation sector. It's not just aviation in isolation. We're depending more and more about what is happening around us to allow for these new technologies to work. So I think it's also about embracing learning, because I moved from the Air Force and over to commercial and with the Scandinavian Airlines for some time. And then I moved over to other sectors, looking again at development and really both being a startup and being working in established organizations. So that was about embracing learning, but also I think it has taught me some pragmatism. You have to be pragmatic, being very, very strong on principles when you try to develop something is not always a good match. So, and maybe the last thing I would comment on that is the need for efficiency. And in aviation, it's interesting because efficiency is normal. Often we talk about turnaround times and how we can operate efficiently within the commercial civil sector at least. But I think it's also efficiency in supporting some of these new stakeholders, these new players to the aviation market to make sure that they do not, how can I put this, bark up the wrong tree for a long time. That we are able to support them in understanding and translating, what is aviation about if they are newcomers. And we see this in the drone area as well, that there's very different levels of experience with aviation. So also how we can support these newcomers as well as the trying to facilitate the more established ones is really really key for us.
Right. What a fascinating journey. I bet you in almost over 4 years, almost 5 years of hosting this podcast, you are probably the first fighter pilot I've had on the show. So it's already fun and new in that way. Now, the Civil Aviation Authority at Norway, the CAA, has established something very interesting, the test arena, the regulatory sandbox to look at electric aircraft. Now, why electric aircraft? Why is Norway focusing on electric aircraft? And why was this test arena established with Avinor and CAA?
Well, it does have some historic background. I think maybe some of the key drivers here and background was the electrification of the car sector. I think right now without being exact on numbers, but I think of all new registered cars privately held, I think we're about 97 or 98% of them are electric. And
in
of
Norway.
Course, in Norway.
So that means if I go and buy a Guzzler, Ford F-150 truck or something, I'd definitely be raising some eyebrows there.
You would stand out.
No. So the way to stand out in Norway is not to buy a Tesla, but instead to buy a Ford F-150.
Exactly. But don't you get them electric as well? So you can do that. But no, this it's happening in the car world and also in the maritime sector, because we're a long country within. If you look at the map within, we have a lot of fjords, really dependent on the maritime as well as aviation, and now quite a lot of the ferries, which are basically state financed, are now transitioned to becoming electric and even hydrogen to some extent. And this has impacted us for the past 15 years, I think. It's safe to say. We have worked with us and Avinor. Avinor is they own the state-owned network of airports. So we're both under the umbrella of the Ministry of Transport. So a couple of years back, there was a lot of political interest in this notion of electrify what we can. And we said back then that, well, we see there's a potential for aviation to be electrified as well. Fully aware that this is not going to replace the 737s or Airbus A320s in the next week or the year after or the next decade even. But even so, in the long run, it really makes sense to try to electrify what we can. And we can start with hybrid electric. Now, that was one thing. So we got it into the National Transport Plan, which is key. You need political support, you need political interest. And there was a wide consensus that this money for the first time was earmarked for the green transition of aviation into the National Transport Plan, which is a 12-year plan. And then after that, we got the mission from the Minister of Transport to operationalize, how do we put this money to good worth? So we said, okay, let's establish an international test arena where we can really have the early technologies before they're certified. But it doesn't have to be the first prototype flying, but before they're certified, let's invite the industry to say that you can come here, you can test things out. But we do it not, it's not just having an airstrip and an airspace and say that, okay, you can as an manufacturer, you can come here and test your aircraft, because you can do that anywhere. But what we're doing is setting up the ecosystem for that. So it's a little bit like we're trying to simulate full commercial operations, but without the aircraft being certified. So the aircraft is not certified. You don't have to have an AOC, the Air Operator Certificate. Even we can give an approval for a temporary organization, and so the several things that are not certified and approved, in advance. But then we have to do it case by case, and this is a holistic approach, because we recognize that introducing hybrid electric or full battery electric or hydrogen electric even aircraft is a system transformation. It's not just about the aircraft being certified and then you go out and you start using it. It's a bigger change. But I can keep talking. Well, maybe we should try to narrow in some of these.
I have so many questions. I have so many questions here. Firstly, why electric? Because a country not too far away from you, Sweden, has also got a very strong policy framework, but they're trying to get SAF at all of their airports by the end of the decade. They also have, I think, an aspiration to have completely fossil-free flights by 2030 in Sweden, and Swedavia is working on that. But their focus is on SAF. Your focus is on electric. Why electric?
Well, I would say that it's also about SAF. We were the first country to introduce the SAF mandate. It was only 0.5% back in 2018-19. But the point was to start using SAF mandates, because you establish a mechanism we didn't used to have. So Avinor was also a key driving force in that work, and also pointing towards a fossil-free aviation system. Now, so we're also working on SAF, because we have a lot of green hydropower. We have quite a lot of biological feedstock that could potentially be biosaf, and the green hydropower could potentially be eSAF. So there are several projects being planned, but of course, as in for many parts of the world, it's still difficult to move it over the final investment decision. Now, so I would rather say electric as well, because in our perspective, we need to not just for the emissions itself, but also for energy efficiency. We see the value of electrifying what we can. And the important thing about going electric is that no, we do not expect the first versions, the first few aircraft, the first segment, the first use case to be full battery electric and be doing a lot of long-range flights. Not at all. And it can even be hybrid electric, as long as the propulsion system is electric, because that's a big challenge. What does this mean for us? So that was the reason why electric, because we see that if we're able to get things in the air and really start the hands-on understanding of what these new technologies mean, both their possibilities, their limitations, the challenges, and of course for us as well, the whole regulatory framework in the different areas. And we're not just talking about the certification of the aircraft, we're also talking about how does this impact the way you train the pilots, the way you train the maintenance people, the way you set up your aerodrome, your infrastructure environment, the way you mark things, the way you design your air traffic procedures, the way you design your airspace, etc., etc. So, and we know this is a systems transformation, but it's so important that we get moving, because just waiting for the technologies to be ready, that does not create the accelerated implementation we'd like to see.
Very, very good. And thank you for once again explaining in detail. There's one more aspect I want to double click on here, which is Avinor and CAA. I don't see a mention at the beginning of oh, we must have a big airline as part of this. We must have a big anchor airport, let's say like Oslo, as part of it. And when we work at Simplifying with governments, with airlines and airports around the world, those are the ones taking first step. Like, hey, I'll be the hub airport taking care of staff, or I'll be the airline that orders. And look at what's happening, let's say, with Beta and Air New Zealand. Air New Zealand is the anchor there, not the government of New Zealand or an association of airports. This is very interesting. Why Avinor and CAA? Why not an airline or an airport to lead this?
I think if we could say that this is deterministic, we know that if we had an airline taking a product and then started operating and solve it, then that would be fine. We're happy with that. But that's not how we see it. We say it's still early times. We do not know which operators are interested, which operators will route investments into that. We don't know how the capital sector will react to electric aircraft yet, or when do we see the foundation for scaling. So for us, what we had was we had an interested CA. We had an agreement with the EASA as well. We'll maybe come back to that. And Avinor is not just owning 43 of the, i.e. most of the commercial airports in Norway, with a couple of exceptions. They're also the NSP, so the air traffic management operator, if you like. So that combination of us as a regulator and Avinor with infrastructure and the airspace, that is really a majority of the part of the aviation system to allow for these operations. So it made much more sense for us to say, no, but we'll set up this international test arena and we'll have international calls where we invite the different manufacturers and we invite the different operators or potential operators to join us. And that's how we do it, because then we have the full, we'd like to see things getting airborne to understand the technologies, and then we don't know who that will be. So if you put all the eggs in, that would be for us to put all the eggs in one basket, saying that, oh, we'd like to see how Scandinavian Airlines can do with this product. That could potentially narrow it down, because right now we do not exactly see which operators and which products will sort of succeed, and or what is mature enough.
Right. I think that's very ambitious, and I think that's quite path-breaking. Once again, I've not seen a lot of examples of this in the world. Possibly Singapore and Changi Airport come to mind, but not a lot around the world. Now, you have just finished the first round of testing around Beta Technologies flights between Stavanger and Bergen, and this was operated by Bristow Norway, so cargo routes only. What were the key lessons learned here?
So for 6 months, from August 8th last year and until January 31st this year, there were 126 flights. So this goes to show that this was not a one-off, this is not a PR thing, this is for in-depth learning. And it was a step-by-step approach. So we started easy, we didn't fly, it was Beta Bristow. They were picked out after I had an international call, and then they were picked out based on some requirements. And then they started operating locally, day VFR, flying locally. And then we did it step by step. So we had 3 phases actually in that demonstration program, where at the end of this program, there was like full IFR operations. But of course, with a battery electric aircraft, you have to be really focused and to make sure that you can complete the program, that you have a low threshold for canceling. Maybe we'll touch back on safety issues and all that. But and then what we saw completing the program, and mind you, the program was quite interesting, because it was from plus 27 degrees to minus 10 degrees in this range of temperatures they were operating in. And at the end of the program, there were some interesting learnings, maybe not where we expected them the most, but rather, I would say, how undramatic it was to operate. But it is a bit like an ordinary conventional takeoff and landing aircraft between 2 airports, trying to just do the operations and doing the turnarounds and see the charging times and all that. But maybe the biggest learning from that, there were quite a few of them. We issued a final report. Just someone can reach out and I'll share it with you. But it was about airspace and optimizing for electric aircraft. Because, of course, these aircraft, whether it's hybrid or full battery electric, will have typically a limited range. So the system today is that often when you fly, you fly out, you have to plan to fly out the long way and in the long way, because just in case, this and that. What we see is that we have to revisit both how we design procedures, but also how we approach this and how can we optimize for electric or electrified aviation. And so, for example, if you do an approach to an airport and then you cannot land, you have to do a go around and you have to go to an alternate airport. Normally, with a jet aircraft, you climb out high, and then you glide in. An electric aircraft would prefer to actually just get airborne and stay as low as possible within safety boundaries. Of course, you don't want
Very interesting. Very interesting.
These small things really triggers that, okay, if you would like to stay low, then how can you make that happen? And the other one is if we advance this scenario, we're seeing the rapid buildup of more drone operations. And right now, these two unmanned and manned segments are pretty much segregated, so that they're split. Now, in the future, we know we want to integrate this. So if you do that, how do you integrate more electric or hybrid electric aircraft in the lower airspace? How do you do this lower airspace management? That's maybe one of the key learnings from this first program.
Wow, this is so fascinating. Once again, a couple of things you mentioned there that I want to see what the learnings were. Airlines are often concerned about turnaround time. If I speak to SAS Scandinavian, one of the best on-time performances in the world, they are so good with their operations, right? What are the implications here? Simple thing in beta test. What did you learn around aircraft turnaround time? Is the charging taking longer than expected? Is it reliable in every turn? Is it taking less than expected? Can planes come in, passengers board, and take off like most airlines, or something different needs to be done?
Well, we did not operate with passengers this time, but
yes, cargo only, right?
Yeah, it was let's say simulated cargo operation, because it's not a commercial operation at all, but everything was simulated as being a commercial operation. That's how we can allow for it, because if it was commercial, it would be a different story. We can do it in the way we did. But just on the charging time, it's a couple of things that are of interest. One thing is if you operate and you see that you have to charge consecutively with, let's say, rather short flights, but you have to charge every time. Eventually, I'm not talking about the beta aircraft as such, because we're not that interested in one particular aircraft. We're interested in the kinds of technologies. But we see, for example, that how you can cool down batteries. Why, if you do multiple charges throughout the day, because steadily the battery temperature is increasing if you do a lot consecutive charging throughout a long operating day. So the problem is maybe not the turn on as such, because that's a matter of how much charging power do you have. If you have, we have a lot of EVs, so a lot of charging stations, so we know you can do a calculation of how fast can you charge. But maybe then also look at how do you cool the batteries, and those are also different systems. So, and we see that some of these manufacturers are planning for an onboard cooling system for batteries, and some are planning for having an external cooling system to save weight and all that. So this is, and I'm not saying that this or that choice is the wrong or the good one, but we're just seeing that is typically one area where I hope that we'll arrive at some kind of standardization. I'm talking at a global level, and seeing so that we agree on what would make most sense. Because if we want to scale, if we have different solutions for every airport or to different countries, then that will not be a good scaling factor. But having said that, it's pretty, I would say there's a lot of data on the charging. It's pretty much as expected. So we established 2 fast chargers, one mobile fast charger, because of the transformation station in that airport was not, there was not enough electrical power. So we had a big battery that was charged overnight, and then the aircraft connected, and then you dumped the power. And the other one was a permanent with a hatch in the ground.
Nice. So proper
And
A/B testing here.
yeah. It's exactly the same principle. And then you open the hatch and you could connect directly to the aircraft. But they had enough power to just feed it right then and there from the grid. So it's just some examples on how we learn and how we see that some of this is just as expected, but there are other topics that really is where you say that, oh, this has to possibly become standard in some way, this or that solution.
Right. Very, very fascinating. Now, just as you're getting done with Beta, Electra, the other promising electric aircraft manufacturer, is going to start the challenge and participate in these tests. What's going to be different about Electra than what Beta did?
Well, yes. So we had another call, or a new call, because we want to keep these programs coming. So there will be another call out later this year or early next year, looking for different technologies. Maybe I should just say that because we want to see different kinds of technologies. Because we would, and I expect we'll also have some vertical solutions. We'll have slightly bigger aircraft, as they are also manufacturers working in 19 seats, etc., etc. So Electra is special in their own way that they have this blown wing concept, so they can take off and land on very, very short distances. And our call to the market was that we'd like to see something that could impact the regional aviation structure, if you like. So in our country, and by the way, we really want to phase in these new technologies because we see we need them, either for areas that do not have the airport right next door, but we have a lot of airports as well. So some of them are really short field, like 800 meters, and some are longer. Now, we want to have, as I said, to try to understand this regional aviation structure when it comes to technologies where you can land and take off really, really short distances. And also they have very low approach and departure speeds, if needed. So it's interesting because that aircraft is what will come here to be tested will be the EL2, which is the prototype. And that's a two-seater. But they have the production type, it will be the EL9, which definitely could be interesting because, our flights are from anything. I think the shortest one is 37 kilometers from airport to airport. If you want to drive, if you choose to drive your Tesla around or another EV and drive around, maybe you're out on the road for 3 or 4 hours. So, and also we have quite a few routes that are like a milk route where you jump from airport to airport. It's not enough. There's not enough traffic to have the hub and spoke. So you should jump along the coast. So of course, if you can have technologies that can maybe have a different kind of offering to the market, that's interesting. So that's a long introduction to your question, but still.
It's important to understand the background. This is good. Thank you.
There's some context. So what Electra is doing that we will be looking at are actually 3 different ways of employing this. So we'll see how we can use it in and out of a busy airport, but maybe not using the main runway. And then it's also about using it in new locations where maybe there is not a commercial airport today. What is needed to be serving such an aircraft? What is needed to have the commercial operations? Because doing a private operation, you can basically take your aircraft and land in a grass strip or a gravel strip or something. But if you want commercial, then you trigger a whole different set of regulatory framework. So this is some of the things we want to be testing out, and also what are other possibilities with this technology that can, when you land, and we see landing and stopping in about 100 feet without necessarily a lot of headwind, that's just the approach speed of 30-35 knots, and then you stop fast. What does that mean? What does it mean if you have a 9-seat doing that? And are they, again, how will this integrate with other traffic? And this is something we just started on, so it's a notch up on the complexity scale, because this is more new stuff. It's not a traditional operation between two airports. It's about looking at new use cases and how can we employ this. So we'll have more people involved, and it'll be a longer planning period, and then it will be operations next year in the spring.
Very nice. This is really good. I love how you have thought through this, and how, direct aviation, for example, as a business model, can have a significant impact in Norway as well. You also have signed a cooperation agreement with EASA in November 2025, where you will be looking at evolution of technology. What is this partnership about with EASA? How does that work?
Well, what we have set up, we started the process setting up a regulatory sandbox. Now, a regulatory sandbox can mean a lot of different things depending on the context. So in our world, the regulatory sandbox is there because we say that we want to provide a full ecosystem to be trying these new technologies in an early phase before they're certified, before everything is approved. To do that, we need to look at how can we allow for that operation. It's inherently a higher risk because things are not certified, because things are not approved, because we do not have a lot of data. So that means we need to work at this differently, and we need to have enter into contracts defining what are the learning objectives, how do we go about doing this. And right now, with EASA, much of this learning is about how can we understand the existing regulation in light of these new technologies, but also how can we allow for the operation exposing third parties for technologies that are not as mature as everything that is certified. So we need a framework for that. And I think, there is work being done within Europe, within the EU system, to have let's say, a regulatory sandbox guidelines and a part of the existing framework. But right now it's not. So what we're doing is that we're pushing this first. We're developing a national framework, a national regulation, and then but we're doing this and all the time learning together with the EASA. So we're trying to impact how fast we can move and to improve certification processes,
Right.
to improve regulatory changes and that process, and seeing how can this be done. Because it is quite a challenge to be a CEA and say that, well, we invite things that are not approved. And we say that we can do this, but we can do it because we're doing some mitigation stuff on the side. That is that goes in the direction of safety, of course.
Yep, and I think this secures a long-term pathway as well if the regulations are on side with you. Now, the test arena, which you've designed, is to reduce barriers of the introduction of zero-emission technologies. But in practice, what are some of the 2 or 3 barriers that have proven the most stubborn to dismantle so far?
Well, we see that. I think maybe the one thing I'll volunteer here first is that there are a lot of different funding mechanisms, funding schemes, support schemes to support the different sectors. I think historically we come from a time where aviation was still, let's say, a luxury good. We've always been self-financed. No need for support because this is what people did. But for us, aviation it's everyday life, it's commute, it's making our society work. But at the same time, we see that the different, both national and international support schemes, let's say for research projects or for innovation projects or for on investment side, those structures do not reflect the fact that aviation has a longer time. It's really expensive to develop new technologies. You will not have the effect. I'll give an example. there was there are different structures you can apply for, but in the research area, often if you have, for example, a green application for some green transition, that is not earmarked for aviation. It is wide, right? So it's up to the different players to apply for those for the funding. But often then the question, for example, would be, okay, what is the expected reduction of emissions in 2030? And for us, it's like expected emission reductions in 2030. It's negligible, practically none, because we're still looking at 10 to 15 years horizon before we start really bringing in technology that can replace some of these volume niches where you, for example, have the some of the heavy city pairings where you have 737s or thereabouts operating today. So that things take time is not reflected in the different structures we have. So that is one thing that it will right now is preventing scaling. That means that aviation projects rarely sort of meet the same competition or can match the competition from other sectors. Now, the other thing is the interest from, I would say, investors as well. We are working on SAF. We are working on promoting. I know we've been in discussions on what is needed to scale SAF production. In the same way, but it's gotten even not it's not that advanced for the electric or hybrid electric solutions.
Right.
Because if you look at the different plans, the different roadmaps, it says that, well, SAF will do the majority of the work, and then hence there's a lot of investment interest in that field. But our point is that, well, we also need to electrify what you can. And we do not know what is the ceiling for how much you can cover with electric aviation or hybrid electric aviation. About half of all the flights in one given day is less than 1,500 kilometers. Maybe you can cover 500 kilometers 5 years from now. Maybe you can do 1,000 kilometers 12, 18 years from now, and then maybe you can do 1,500 kilometers. And if you look at hydrogen electric, maybe you can do that even sooner if they mature. Now, that means that we do not know exactly how much volume we can see in this electric market or hybrid electric market. But I think we need to mobilize more investor interest in this field, because often, as I said, you look at the roadmaps, it's a very low percentage. As this could be cut by hydrogen or by electric. And I don't think we quite know that. It would be like winding back and asking in Norway, just before you bought your Tesla, okay, how big of an impact do you think this will have if you ask the market in 2005 or 10? And now as I said, we're looking at I know it's different, but you're still looking at a 98% market share for EVs in Norway or for new cars. I think it's a bit of the same principle. If you and we don't know the technology, how fast technology will wind up. So I think this mobilizing investor interest and answering the knowledge they need to be doing more investments is key, both for SAF but also for the electric. And then maybe the final point to that, what is scaling? I think it's about also public acceptance. It's about seeing what kind of aircraft will I be a passenger on? What would you send your children on? How is the impact of the lowered sound? What the increased energy efficiency? Will that move even faster? But do we see this as being safe enough? Is it really giving us new mobility solutions that will improve our mobility structure? Things that remain to be seen, but those are the things that will, I think, decide a little bit of a scaling speed.
Right. What's next in this? You've done the beta trials, the electric trials are starting next. Are there more such trials in the pipeline?
Yes, there are. It has to be because we have touched on two different prospects. Of course, we are being funded by the politicians, and you're always at the mercy of having political interest.
You mean the taxpayers?
and the taxpayers. What we see is that I think the reason why also, at least in Europe, they want to see us pushing this forward, because taking this principle of getting things airborne and seeing is believing, we're seeing it's making a difference. And I think we need to be pushing on that. But this means also that we are looking at how do we get the slightly larger aircraft on board as well. We're looking at, and then it's now we worked 4 seat, 5, 6 seats, and then 9 seats, and then the 19 seats to stay within the CS23 regime before we move over to large aircraft. And then we'll see the likes of, for example, Hart with a 36 seat, or we could see others in the pipeline with Elysian with the 90 seat prospect and all that. So I think we'll see these different players, but what we want to do is connect those who are even a bit less mature to doing modeling, to look at how we can work with a future scenario-based trials, because now we're learning a lot about the actual flight, but then looking at things that are maybe 2 or 3 years away from flying, we are connecting with them. We have a dialogue with a lot of manufacturers over the world, but also seeing how we can start playing around with different modeling, digital models, to understand in the same way. And then as soon as they are mature enough to be flying, then we'll do the flying bit. So it's really developing this way of facilitating for innovation. I think this is the fascinating part of it. And mind you, working with a regulator is not boring work.
I love it. This shall be the quote of the day. Who says regulators are boring? Not in Norway,
Exactly.
right? Now,
Exactly.
in the interest of not being boring here, we talked about Tesla, and we've seen what Tesla has done as an outsider to the car manufacturing industry. It was not the Ford or the GM or the Toyota or the Honda that made cars go electric globally. It was Tesla that kickstarted that revolution. Are you also betting on newcomers like Beta and Electra and Elysian and Hart to do this rather than the Boeings and the Airbuses of the world?
Well, that's the good thing of doing what we're doing, is that we're not betting on anything really. Let's wait and see. But I think what maybe makes the aviation world stand out is that it's more complex. You cannot just focus on the car or the aircraft. Or in a car world, you can to a large degree maybe focus on the product itself. Doing that in the aviation world, if you just focus on the aircraft and you do not have everything else coupled onto it, you will probably not succeed, or you will have hurdles, and the scaling bit will take a long time. So I think with this complexity and the higher degree of safety requirements, I think that we need to really look at both best practices. We need to have the latest technologies, and I think it'd be very difficult for a startup alone if they do everything in a vertical integration. It will be extremely complex and expensive. So, but I'm not going to guess on what is going to move fast and not. But I see that the complexity is so high that I think for aviation, and speaking on behalf of aviation, we need to see how can we collaborate for real, because that's what I think I spent the most time on in the last 3-4 years, is figuring out how do we collaborate without giving away our technical know-how or giving away our competitive advantage. So we need to figure this out, because I think in the end, how fast we get the different products, and we'll have different products, that I'm sure of. We'll see a more fragmented market. That feels like a logical conclusion on it. And really, if we are able to collaborate in the areas where we should, like we do on safety, it's the same principle, but we need to practice to be able to do it. And so in that way, we can help each other really to accelerate things. And we need to do it.
Wow, fantastic. I love the vision. There's one question, a burning question I have though. Because there's no airline leading this effort, what's in it for Norway, the country, or the CAA? Let's say SAS Scandinavian, the largest airline, or Norwegian Airlines, or Widerøe come and say, you know what, we'll continue buying the Boeings and the Airbuses and the large planes. We're not interested in all of these experiments you're doing. And what if in 10 years from now, there are no electric aircraft being flown by a regular airline in Norway? What happens then? Is that a failure, or do you have other goals here?
Either way, I think it will never be failure. I think the reason why we're doing it now is that there are so many indications. We have seen in the maritime and in the car and now for trucks that there is some value here. I must underline, though, that we're also very focused on SAF. It is not to say that all the work on SAF is we're looking a different way, but we see
yes,
that.
And I'm coming to SAF shortly. I'm curious, what does success look like in this in these experiments?
So we need to look at the complementary solutions. Now, I think success will be that we have been able to provide a means of understanding technologies. I think the biggest value is it's maybe not even for the manufacturer or for the operator. Maybe the biggest value is for the whole ecosystem. So we can impact that the different funding schemes, that the investors, that regulation, that public acceptance, all these factors are sort of surrounding the aviation sector itself, that we can impact that as well. Because I think we who are very close to the process, we know a little bit about what is needed, but it's impacting the whole system around that is really deciding, is this going to be a success or not? And just I need to point to one connection here. For example, we need to exploit what is happening around us because there's a lot of things happening. We can mention AI. We can talk about that for a long time, but also on this the security situation in the world. Of course, living in our country and most countries in the world, I was saying, this preparedness issue is right in the front of our minds. So seeing how we can use this new technology in different use cases to really have them airborne, to show how can we do this. So maybe it could be a cargo use case or for emergency response services, or it could be for a joint civil military use, or just civilian preparedness. I think these are ways we need to really try to elaborate on how can we put these new products into practical applications. And that, right, I think will decide if we're successful or not, if we really try to make the most of this systemic approach.
Love it. I love the thinking and the vision there, where it's not just about one party, it's about everyone and the ecosystem here. Now let's talk about SAF. I know we've drilled deep into this test terrain because I think it's so unique. Nobody else is doing that. But Norway was the first country in the world, like you said, to implement a SAF mandate back in 2018, starting at 0.5% by volume. You had that early mandate, and now you're ramping up in alignment with Refuel EU. What have been the lessons, and how's the journey been there?
It was I think it was a bold first move because it was we were at the forefront. I think the big lesson was that this is possible to do. It's possible to have a blending mandate. It's possible to regulate it. It's possible to have reporting and follow up, etc. Because we know we're sort of part of the economic European area, but we're not an EU state. It means that we, to a large degree, need to adopt EU regulation, including Refuel EU, aviation regulation, so that the government says we'll adopt it and it'll be in place by 27. So we'll tag along on the European, be part of the European system. So the experience was that introducing the blending mandate was a success as such, but of course it didn't reduce emissions a lot because it's very small, but that was not the point. It's a little bit like with electric drivelines. The point is not how electric you are to begin with a hybrid driveline. It's about the driveline is electric. So it's same with SAF and blending mandate. It's about testing its mechanism to make it work. Now it's been a little. There have been several projects, as I said, within Norway that are both on eSAF and BioSAF that have been close to realization, but not quite past the final investment decision. And this is a story in many places. We talked about this before. So and with the EU, Refuel EU now will have as an CAA will have a different role. We'll be looking at the reporting and what if you're not doing what you're supposed to do with the blending mandate and all that. But we will be following the European system. So I really hope that we'll see that we're able to stand together to get a strong foundation for the blending mandates, also see how we balance that with the CORSIA structure as well. And of course, within Europe, it's the EU ETS, which is really playing a big role. But that's also routing a lot of money back into the EU Innovation Fund, for example, which can really pump quite a lot of money back into the market for earmarked for the green transition. So long answer again, but I think in Norway we really are hoping to get some SAF production rate increasing. We have a hydrogen production site over here, just next to us, which is going to serve some of the largest ferries in the world, going across open seas for 3 hours, which is going to be a run on hydrogen. But of course, hydrogen is again a factory into an eSAF. So things are connected. So I think that could also be some of the development we'll be seeing in the future, that possibly the hydrogen capacity, because there are more production sites and hydrogen also being planned. So we'll see how that plays out.
Right. And hydrogen as a feedstock for SAF is very interesting given where Norway is and the capabilities there. Okay, very interesting. Now, for all the things you're doing, there are always critics. Sometimes critics will say that regulatory sandboxes that you're trying to design can create conditions that don't actually scale once things are ready to go. How do you ensure whatever you're learning from everything you're doing, both in electric as well as the SAF space, can lead to mainstream certification pathways?
I think that we're seeing that. I think that's the reason why this is, let's say, popular. Maybe for two reasons. Because the one thing is that we're not doing this to be pushing Norwegian industry. We're doing this because the state, the taxpayer, or the politicians are saying we want to phase in zero low emission technologies as soon as they are viable or functional. And so that means that we are able to agree on, and we spent time on that, agreeing on learning objectives. And the learning objectives are always connected to the whole system. What are the learnings we want to get out of this? And it's broad learning and it's open learning to the degree possible. And this is something the Beta and Bristow and Electra would have to sign off, that we agree on these learning objectives, because they are also well served that we are preparing the ecosystem for new technologies. It doesn't say that it then will be a Beta aircraft or an Electra aircraft that is finally going into the first commercial operations, but it is an arena for the learning. So I think that Norway is doing this is, and why it's popular is that, as I said, one, we're not pushing our own industry. That's not our key driver. And also this is something that will benefit all of the parties involved. And also that the learning we're seeing that the learning points are so omnidirectional and can be followed up in different ways, that we're really trying to be identifying the real, let's say, scaling barriers. What is really needed to make things happen, and again with a systemic transformation perspective. So, and I think this is the difference between let's say a regulatory sandbox, where one manufacturer is given a chance to test one technology in a sort of closed environment. This is different. This is a wider scope. This is and has the goal of including as many as possible to see the effects of technologies. So I think that is sort of answers, or should answer, some of the potential criticism of, well, a regulatory sandbox is not a real a real environment. But I think the way we're structured it should answer some of these possible shortcomings of a sandbox.
Right. No, very well. Thank you. Thank you for that. Now, looking beyond 2030, not just the next few years, where do you believe Norway will have made the most meaningful contribution to sustainable aviation globally, given all of your pioneering experiments?
I would personally, I would like to say that I'm hoping that, let's say 10 years from now or something, that we could say that we have the greenest aviation system in the world. Because we are working hard on SAF. We are working on zero low emission technologies. We're pretty advanced in air traffic management and green approaches, departures, optimizing routes. We have I would say maybe a little bit of a commercial for Norwegian Technologies here, but I think a remote tower center here that is centralizing tower services for 15 towers now. I think all these players can contribute to creating an aviation system with the lowest possible climate and environment impact, including noise, of course. So I would really like to see us being able to make the most of that. But of course, it will depend on the market, how fast they will be ready for the first commercial zero emission operations or low emission hybrid operations. But I would really like to see that we are succeeding in being the fastest developers of new knowledge connected to a greener aviation system. And I would also need to add that we cannot just talk about the green transition in isolation. We see that we also need to tag it on to other needs, to other challenges, whether it's preparedness, whether it's logistics, whether it's serving the community with new services. This is also a way to give a more push to the green transition. So I think this is the system we're talking about. So I really hope that we're able to hold on to this being a center or being able to contribute to developing this knowledge that we need to move faster.
I love it. I was just as impressed when we met in person as I am hearing all the details of the pioneering approach towards sustainable aviation in Norway. Can't wait to see the results of the further experiments you run.
Nice
and
Thank you.
What a journey, Jan, from being a fighter pilot to carrying on that spirit, the cutting edge spirit now in sustainable aviation. Now, the final part of this interview is what we call the rapid fire round, which probably you would have heard or be familiar with if you've heard previous episodes. And we'll get to know you a bit personally. So we'll start with something very, very simple. What's your favorite airline?
Go on, I'm working for a civil aviation authority. So
no, it could be a non-Norwegian airline. That's fine.
Yeah. I would definitely pick someone away from the home market. I wouldn't mind it. So now you have other questions where I can
yes, I do. Okay, I'll skip the favorite airline and the favorite airport. Okay, because by the way, the most politically correct answer I've ever received in the history of the show is Pan Am. You can never go wrong with Pan Am, and that was a smart person. But okay, fine. Okay, favorite book.
I would say Catch-22 by Joseph Heller. For it was absurd, and I love the sense of humor in that. And maybe just for the sheer quality of the writing would be a Danish author called Carsten Jensen. He wrote a book called We the Drowned. It doesn't sound very optimistic, but it's high quality reading.
Okay, thank you. Favorite movie?
With maybe a sense, maybe being a little dark, but Pulp Fiction.
Okay. I was expecting Top Gun, but I'll take Pulp Fiction.
There was one answer you would never get from me is exactly the Top Gun.
Okay. No. Favorite city?
Oh, that would be New York City for the diversity.
What is something you do in your free time?
Oh, well, I just built a house just at the ocean, some clicks down the coast here. It's very exposed to the brutal nature. So it's being outside. It's being doing the mountain hiking, doing the fishing, and just being exposed to that. You can't live this far up north of the Arctic Circle without being into nature. And now I saw that just in the calendar that the sun will set again on July 12th. That's the first time in the past weeks that the sun will be below the horizon. But of course, we don't see the sun because it's cloudy today and 12 degrees. But anyway, in theory.
So the sun is not setting for a few weeks, is what you're saying.
Exactly.
Wow. I also think not only are you the first fighter pilot on the show, I think you're the first person who lives in the north of the Arctic Circle on this show. So that's also unique. What is something you'd like to learn, Jan?
I would like to learn to sleep well, and and another language. That would be good.
Okay, and good finally, the best advice you've received.
Ooh. Oh, that's difficult. I think that differences in perspectives are key to have progress. You need to connect with people that do not say the same stuff and have the same perspective.
Love it. Fantastic. Well, Jan, it was a pleasure speaking with you. I learned so much. Once again, please continue your pioneering ways and all the best. I look forward to seeing you very soon.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'll bring it to the full team, both here and at Avinor. We're hard at work, so we'll keep pushing.
Fantastic.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Sustainability in the Air. Aviation is one of the hardest to decarbonize industries, yet there are multiple paths to get to net zero. Awareness is key to a green future. So please give us your support to help our sustainable aviation insights reach a wider audience. You can do this by sharing this episode on your network, on LinkedIn, Twitter, or even WhatsApp. Or perhaps you might consider leaving a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to this episode. You can start a conversation with us by writing to us at podcast@simpliflying, that's simply with an i.com. And for more content on sustainable aviation, please visit our website green.simpliflying.com and join the movement. Sustainability in the Air is an original podcast by Simpliflying. The show is produced by Juraj Toth in Slovakia. Dirk Singer is our Director of Sustainability, who leads research for each interviewee out of Greenwich, UK. Shubhadeep Pal is our Supervising Editor based out of Mumbai and Singapore. The articles are written by Ayushi Badola in Dehradun in India and Meera Hull in Montreal, Quebec. Creative design is led by Ligia Esteve in Montreal. Baiba Drimen is the project director for the show based out of Valencia, Spain. Special thanks to Wendy Sim in Singapore. And I'm Shashank Nigam, the CEO of Simpliflying and your host. Please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn.